Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, Corey. How are you doing? Hi, Dan.
Pretty good.
I'm assuming that Pat O'Toole will be joining us tonight. I just talked with him a little while ago.
We still got a couple of minutes. So we'll give everybody a couple of more minutes to join us here. I know it's a little challenging on Monday evening after a holiday with all the emails we've sent out. So thank you all for being here.
And Corey, we'll let us know when your folks are there. We're all here from our side, I believe.
Okay. So give one more minute and then we'll get this party started. All right. Well, we'll get this started. I appreciate you taking time to be here this evening. Those of you that are members of this, what we're calling affectionately a board steering committee. In case I haven't met you, I'm Corey Starr. I'm the Director of Community Services here in Los Alamos County. And we're really excited this is really ground zero for our kickoff to develop an integrated master plan for the Community Services Division. Historically, these items are linked typically only on the Parks and Rec side. But we see the value in having not only our library, but how social services, cultural services fit into this traditional Parks and Recreation plan and how we can deliver those services effectively across our community. I would be willing to wager that we probably touch more people in a positive way, with the exception of the Department of Utilities. And probably the only time you talk to those guys is when they send you a bill. So we're really excited to have you as part of this project here. We have Greenplay LLC out of Colorado is our vendor here. They've done several hundred of these across the United States. And I think they're uniquely qualified to help us develop this plan. The plan's going to take about a year to put together, and then we're just starting it off. So if we could, can we have, I'll try to keep the grid, but if you'll go around and kind of introduce yourself, kind of tell us about the board that you represent, and then anything that you might find interesting about why you wanted to be part of this conversation. So Darren, just so I can keep straight, would you start?
Sure. Hi, Darren Meadows. I'm a representative from the Parks and Rec Board. I serve on the IRAS committee also as the liaison to the Parks and Rec Board. I've been in Los Alamos since I was 2, so 1971. So got a lot of history up here, and my family, was raised here, and a lot of interest in the of course, Parks and Rec, mainly recreation. I guess one of the biggest things on my kind of checklist, and I'm excited to be involved here, is just what we can do at the ice rink to try to get the season more sustainable. We really have had a tough time down there, and it seems like it's getting worse and worse every year. So anyway, that's just one of my kind of key interest points. Thank you.
Chris?
Hi, my name is Chris Olson. I'm also on Parks and Rec, also the Parks and Rec liaison to the Open Space Subcommittee, which does a lot of the trails and hiking and all of that kind of stuff to the Parks and Rec to feed those ideas in through that process. I didn't really grow up in Los Alamos. I grew up, I guess, around Los Alamos. I grew up actually up in the Jemez and then sort of transplanted here later. So, so relatively local. I'm sort of a big outdoor enthusiast myself personally, mountain biking and hiking and all that kind of stuff. So I guess one of the things that in sort of reading the charter for the integrated master plan and what this committee would be helping out on, I guess one of the things that I'm sort of excited about is looking at opportunities that we can sort of become more, well, I don't want to compare it, but take advantage of some of the natural resources that we have in terms of mountain biking, hiking, and those kinds of things, to really become somewhat of an outdoor destination, like other communities have sort of figured out, and all of the benefits and some of the shortfalls that therein come within that. So anyway, that's me.
Cam?
Hi, I'm Cam Connors. I'm recently a member of the Los Alamos Community Health Council, And I'm also part of a subcommittee that's working on the comprehensive health plan. So what I'm really interested in is that we work closely with social services. And also the comprehensive health plan is really, we're trying to, we're just starting working on it, but it's going to involve all the resources within Los Alamos County as far as health and well-being of the residents. And so I think this is a really good time to coordinate our efforts on building, again, an integrated health plan, and also with your whole integrated master plan for community services.
Cameron, I don't want to interrupt, but what's your timeline on the Healthy Communities Plan?
It's still pretty loose. We're actually going to the county council tomorrow night with a proposal on a timeline, rough timeline, really more the process. But I think it's really not realistic to expect any kind of concrete plan within less than a year.
Cool.
We're going to do a lot of data collection. And so there's going to be a community survey, there's going to be work, focus groups, those kind of things. So that's going to take a fair amount of time.
Christine?
Yes, thank you. My name is Christine Koblenz. I serve with CAM on the County Health Council and also on the Health Plan Subcommittee. I work as the Director of Healthy Schools for Los Alamos Public Schools. So I'm really passionate about youth and families and how we integrate them in these services and having more integrated services. So breaking down some of the silos across our community. And then some of the work Cam and I are doing, and also in the schools, is being especially concerned about how we welcome our families who are furthest from opportunity. Are these services available to them and accessible and welcoming to those families?
Fran?
I'm Frances Knudsen. I am a new library board member, and I got tasked to join this effort. The library might be seen as an underused resource, and it's a very rich resource. So anything that can tie things together is a good plan.
Katie?
I'm Katie Brule. I'm the director of PEAK, which runs the Los Alamos Nature Center. And Corey, I don't know if I was supposed to be here as a representative of the Lodgers Tax Board or the Tourism Strategic Plan Implementation Task Force.
You can probably wear both hats.
Okay, well, I wanted to tell you that I've timed out of Lodgers Tax. So if you want someone from Lodgers Tax, you need to find someone else. But anyway, I'm here. Thanks.
I'm going to jump in real quick. Did Katie say she's the director of PEAK? Did I get that?
The Pajarito Environmental Education Center, we're the nonprofit that runs the Nature Center under contract to the county.
Yep. Thank you.
Dina?
Hi, everyone. I've been coming to I started coming to Los Alamos as a student in the late 90s, and then I moved here in 2002. I'm originally from Russia. I finished high school in America, though, so I think of myself as an American. My primary interest is, well, one, I'm really excited to see, I was really excited about your appointment, Mrs. Tyron, last year. So I'm really excited about all the things that have started since then. I think we are in dire need of the integration that this promises. My particular perspective is similar to a combination of Darren and Chris's from Parks and Rec experience, as well as putting on trail related and sports related events. I've been a director of the duathlon, of the triathlon, of the splash and dash and all those things. And I think we could really use some interdepartmental coordination to make things more friendly to more of those events, because we have such fantastic venues and so many great people to put these things on. So I'm really looking forward to this. And officially, I represent the Environmental Sustainability Board that I'm a vice chair of here. Thanks.
Catherine?
Good Evening, all. I'm Catherine Hudspeth. I work in the Community Services Department with Corey Styron. I am also the acting social services manager. So I think I'm wearing multiple hats.
And then Linda just got back in today. You want to say, hey, Linda?
Hey, Linda. I'm Linda with, I'm the office manager for community services, and I am here for operational and staff support.
So she's our logistics analyst for getting everybody together in these meetings, making sure they're going to be recorded and all that good stuff. All right, Pat, with that, we'll turn it over to you and your team.
Great, thank you. I also want to thank everybody for their time this evening, and thank you, Linda, for all you've been doing to get all these put together and keeping us all at least on the same night, the same wavelength. I'm Pat O'Toole. I'm a principal with Green Play. I've been with Green Play for 20 years. First half of my career was a park and recreation director and assistant director in 4 different agencies, 4 different states. And I have been consulting and doing this kind of work since 1995. And as Corey said, I think we're approaching close to 650 of these types of plans throughout the country. So we are excited to start this plan. I think our team is somewhat familiar, yet that makes us very unfamiliar with Los Alamos County. And I want to also turn this over to Teresa Penbrook to introduce herself, and she's going to be facilitating tonight's meeting.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Dr. Teresa Penbrook. I'm actually the CEO and founder of Green Play. Since 1999, been leading our various teams and working with Pat for a long time, and also with Dan Cedar here. We've done this kind of project for over almost 650 organizations around the country. And so bring strong experience. And I also happen to be the director of the Healthy Communities Research Group for GP Red, which is a nonprofit organization that looks at research, education, and development for health, recreation, and land management agencies. And so as far as related to the integrated part of this, I'm often working with helping to integrate preventive health and all of a lot of the different aspects that you all are representing today. And so I'll talk more about that in just a second. I do have a presentation to show, if that's okay. Is that a good time to start that now, Pat?
Let's let Dan introduce himself, and then Katrina, and then
oh, I'm sorry,
a good time.
Certainly, go for it.
I'll be quick. Dan Cedar. I am with Green Play, former Parks and Recreation professional over 25 years, originally out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and I am actually now in Omaha, Nebraska. Been here about 11 years. Been with Green Play a little over 5 years now, and doing projects all throughout the United States. My role with this project is a PC, assisting Pat. I'll be doing my best at taking notes tonight, so I'll be quiet and in the background. Thank you.
And Katrina?
Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. I'm Katrina Arndt. I'm with MRWM. We are supporting Pat's team out of the Albuquerque office here. And we have done quite a bit of work in Los Alamos. Sorry, I'm dealing with a toddler here under my desk right now, so I'm trying to keep him not pulling out all the cables. But we have done a bunch of work in Los Alamos. I've done that with my previous firm. I've worked on the zoning code and the downtown master plans. So I have quite a bit of familiarity with Los Alamos. And we are going to support Pat with some of the outreach and some other tasks. And I'm very excited to be part of the team to work in Los Alamos again.
Thank you. And as my name came up, I am the project manager. So anything that our team needs to see or go to a site or have any input, I believe on the last slide of our PowerPoint tonight is my phone number and as well as my email address. And between Corey and I will be the main contacts on each side of our team. So with that, Teresa, take off.
Great. Can you all see the slide? Is it showing? Everybody, perfect. All right, I like that when that works. Okay, so this is, really the start of focus group input. Pat, do you want to go ahead and talk just kind of through the initial parts of this, and then I will come in?
I can, yes. So this slide is kind of an all-encompassing slide that shows you the process of our master plan process. And as Corey said, it's about a 1-year process, but we have a strategic kickoff meeting, which has taken place where we've gone through all the aspects of what we're going to do, everybody understanding everybody's roles, putting a timetable together, actually getting these meetings scheduled. And then we're going to be back in January. So we kind of split the information gathering stage into some virtual here prior to the holidays or in between the holidays. And then probably the last week of January, first week of February, we're going to be in town for 3 consecutive days to do some in-person on-site focus groups, also to do a lot of the planning and input that we're going to get. We're also in February going to have our team come in and do inventory assessment, looking at every park, every asset, every amenity, and really look at the level of service of all of those things in Los Alamos County. And particularly we've decided to also look at Los Alamos, Townsite, and White Rock so that we can compare level of services within those areas as well as overall county, but also compare the demographics and what have you in that. So the community profile will be broken up that way, plus collectively. And then we typically will put together a trends of Parks and Recreation and these integrated services, particularly a lot of the stuff we're finding through GP Red, as Dr. Penbrook brought up, on libraries, on a lot of these things now, healthy communities, that people are widening this span now beyond Parks and Recreation. So, kudos to Corey and Los Alamos County for jumping on that, because we haven't seen a whole lot of that. We've seen a little bit of it. We will kind of be back at our second public engagement for findings and visioning. This will be public meetings, and it will be virtual, where we will actually show, we're going to do it in 2 different meetings. One kind of being the information, the survey results. We are going to do a statistically valid survey showing all of the public input that we've had. So we're summarizing everything, looking at all the analysis work we've done. We are going to look at program operations, maintenance, all of those resources. And then the second one is going to be focused on the level of service and the inventory assessment to go through it, kind of break it up so it's not quite as long a meeting. It has kind of 2 different subject matters. Then we're going to do a visioning again with our internal steering committee group, which is more or less going through looking at our key issues and really discussing our preliminary recommendations to make sure that we can kind of come away and start writing the draft, focusing on recommendations and action plans and those types of things with everybody kind of on the same page. Then we will be back in person, I believe, on that public engagement timeline for the draft and go through the recommendations. And then we will ask for edits and comments and what have you. And we will then assess those and create a final document and come back in for the final meeting. And then from there, we hope the plan, and I think what Greenplay kind of hangs our hat on, is that our plans are implementable based on the action plan we put together that kind of intersects the needs with what resources you have to establish those.
I see that Katie's got her hand up, Pat.
Okay.
Nope, no hand up.
Okay.
Just a niche.
Pat, do you want to kind of tell this group kind of what you envision their role is in this process?
Yes, I think, we wanted to first get your input on the front end here. And then again, this is stage 1. Stage 2, we'd love to have you in on our, there'll be webinars, so we'll be able to take up to 500 people to see the visioning and get your input. So by visioning, we show you here's everything we found. Are we accurate? What did we miss? What do we need to kind of circle back to? And then likewise with the visioning is what do you see recommendations being against these key issues that we find? So we kind of look for you more or less once we get to the open public and we've surveyed them and we've asked their input, we're going to kind of get to where here's how we see the plan coming together. But we look at you guys as what Corey's calling the external steering committee, meaning all the integrations we want to see. That's really what we want you guys to focus on is everything that needs to be integrated in this plan represented and in a way that's, we want to bite off things that are doable and not just put the wish list out there and say good luck. So those are things that we do want you to look at as we, the second, third, and fourth trip. Second and third are the important ones. The fourth one, by that time, we hope we have made everybody's edits and what have you, or discussed why not. So, I think we're looking for this group to kind of be not just that second set of eyes and maybe that third set of eyes to make sure we didn't just ask you one time and then put it together for you. We want you guys to help us through, which is kind of the question I had with the timetable on the other plan. So as research comes out, the fresher the better. If you can share that, then we can look at that. As we hear outdoor recreation destinations, because we do have a huge library of documents that we can go to that we keep up on as we look at across the country as we do this, that we can kind of throw in the mix here.
So really, you guys are going to be the quality control for this. Are we on track? Did we miss something? Oh, by the way, hey, I thought about this. If you guys considered it, I want you to have that role. I don't expect us to have to meet more than like 5 or 6 times through this process, but your role will be really important during that process. So again, thank you so much.
And very much included on the email list too. So as we do get our draft put together, might not be a meeting, but on your own time, we'd love, we are going to kind of request that we get one edited copy back that kind of runs through Corey, but certainly your comments and what have you back through that is imperative. Okay, Teresa. Okay, Corey, I'm going to kind of see if you want to run through this just based on your knowledge base of this. And in each of the focus groups, we're going to pose this up there kind of as projects in progress that maybe people don't know about or whatever, but if you can kind of run through those pretty quickly. And I think it was good to give people an idea. Here's some of the things that are coming down the pike that a lot of people might not know about.
Sure. So the BMX track, we need to change that one to in a holding pattern. Vendor came back with some outrageous pricing, so we're going to have to go back. Brew Arena, the light standards are up and the conduit set. We should have the panel installed by it all lit up by the end of the year here. The Pueblo Canyon Conceptual Trail and Skills Park. We're looking at a nice long trail in Pueblo Canyon with 2 loops for the National Interscholastic Cycling Association to potentially use. We have a large group of youth in our community that participate in that. We'd like to look at a multimodal trail from North Mesa to downtown, a couple of skills parks. The vendors actually selected, and there'll be public input meetings the week of January 10th on that process. So some of you will be getting invitations for that. We're looking at the tennis court tournament site prep. They're working on the RFP. Then we have a couple of options with a shared gymnasium space currently is at the middle school that they're having conversations with the school board and ultimately council on developing that RFP pretty quickly. So those are some things in the hopper right now. And then these here, just some additional options that we've kind of heard from the community over my year here, and some things that staff has said. But you know, what's the opportunity to upgrade Camp May into a nice camping area? We've got some athletic fields that are a little long in the tooth. We might want to look at artificial fields for a number of considerations. Pickleball courts are an emerging trend that are really popular. Do we need a splash pad up here in the Los Alamos town site? We're also doing an ADA audit, and we have some playgrounds that are not fully accessible. Do we need to focus on a fully accessible playground? We've had some requests for exercise stations along trails. We want to look at more sustainable actions in our maintenance and programming. We have the North Mesa, or affectionately called FEMAville. That's a nice big open space that probably should have some conversations about what should that look like. We've got some parcels in White Rock. A more recent one is Cricket Pitch, Community Gardens, and then we've had some requests for lighted playgrounds.
Great. So I'll go ahead and Corey's talked about a lot of the projects that are going on, and Pat represented the process that's going to happen in terms of all the different things. And what I'm really here for tonight is to talk about how do we integrate all the things that you all care about into the other things that the county is already doing. And so really looking at, I do a lot of focus on how Parks and Recreation is incorporated into the role of preventive health and also community resilience. And so several of you mentioned health, several of you mentioned social services. You also mentioned library and tourism, and I know transportation, the nature center, all these different areas. These are all incredibly important. And so we've done in recent, just probably in the last 10 years, what we've started to see is that the traditional Parks and Recreation plan, where they're looking primarily at facilities and programs that are operated by the county, we have really started to incorporate these other aspects into plans. And these are just some logos of places around the country where we've done that. So as I mentioned, I happen to work for both organizations, GP Red and Green Play. And so I'm going to bring this kind of information, a lot of the research, a lot of the trends that we're seeing out there that we might want to consider here in Los Alamos County. And I'd love to get your feedback on that tonight. The primary area that we're looking at is how do we kind of do this focus on health, equity, and community resilience related to making sure that everyone within the county has a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. And so all these services, how can they be incorporated? And then also, how can any obstacles be removed? I know there's various pockets. We know there's different parts of the county that are looking at, kind of at the same time. There's a lot of high income folks, as you all know, highly educated folks within the county, but there also are some other pockets. So we want to make sure that we're looking at under-resourced parts of the county at the same time, making sure that everyone has access to all of the different amenities, but also access to housing, safe environment. So really this whole quality of life process. And then we are basing this on kind of the idea that, human rights are important and they need to be integrated into these types of services that are provided, especially the tax funded services. And that all of this provides individual and community resilience. And so that term is kind of a buzzword these days, but the reality is, how do we help people be happy, healthy, and productive going forward within the county? This, I'm showing this, I see a hand here. Katie, did you have a question before?
Yeah, I do have a hand. Just on that last slide, my question is, I know you're having a lot of different groups weigh in on this plan. Do you have plans to include people from those maybe underrepresented groups? I know I see, looking around at all of us right now, we're all looking fairly white and, sort of like the same people that usually comment on county things. So I'm just wondering what plans you have to get input from other groups of people.
That's a great question. And I'm actually going to turn it back to Pat and Corey, just because I'm not familiar with all of the different engagement techniques.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this, and then Corey, I'm going to hang a little bit of this on you. We're open to, particularly in those 3 days that we're going to be there, for any opportunity for any groups and individuals, if there's a way to get to them through social media, we can look at all those different ways, but we kind of look at it as we're going to be there for 3 days, and even in between, let's just say our scheduled focus groups, if there's any drop in, we've gone to high schools. If there's an event somewhere, we'll drop by, and we might not ask them the whole 9 yards, but we'll ask them some pretty pertinent questions for what we're looking for. So we kind of rely on you guys to tell us where are these groups, or how do we get to them, but we're certainly willing and able to go to them. We just need to know how, what's the best way to do that. And then Corey, we can, on our end, from social media, from almost any way we can do it, whether it's virtual or in person, we can touch any of those groups, neighborhoods, churches. I mean, what, area of town, we can go to that.
Yeah, we're actively soliciting people for the focus groups. We have a list of 99. I have 99 people that we've identified within our staff of groups that we need to represent from various agencies and partners. If there's anyone that this group wants to know is on the list or should be on the list, just shoot me an email. But we're working on it.
Yeah, so part of this conversation tonight is I'm just doing this quick couple slides, and then what we're going to do is we're actually want to hear from you all. And there is a question that's going to come up here about who's not in this meeting and who else should be included. And so it's a great point. So Katie, as you're listening to the rest of this, if you as we get through it, if you have additional things to add, we'll have time for that in just a couple minutes. I wanted to share this graphic, and this is part of our work in looking at how do we integrate the various preventive health aspects. I consider everything that you all represent part of preventive health, because it's part of, how do we recreate body, minds, and spirits of people within the community through quality of life. What we've done is we start to look at things that we call factors, or some of you are in the public health realm that we often called social determinants of health. And the idea that the spaces, programs, and policies that are managed, there's been research done to show that these factors on the left-hand side are the things that parks and recreation agencies have the biggest control over. So things that we actually can, through this type of plan, actually modify, and so that we can make improvements, or we can address with various stakeholders. So things like public safety and perception of safety can often be a key factor that either will kind of modify how people participate in different things, whether they perceive that it's safe to get places. And this can include both physical safety or actual crime rates. And so we're often looking at that. Sometimes perception of safety is more important than actual crime rates, because if somebody doesn't feel safe, they won't use it regardless of what the crime rate is. So we want to make sure that we take those into account. Social and parental engagement. We know that this is a big factor and very important in terms of preventive health aspects. This transportation and access to nature. Access to nature is really evolving as to being incredibly important. And so access, I'll talk more about that in just a second, but we look at access being not only, how close it is, but can you get there? Is there a highway in the middle of the way? Is there a river that you can't get across? And then this whole idea of transportation. If I live 10 miles away, it's still not, even if it's there, it doesn't mean anything to me. So making sure that we can get to it. Then ability to move our bodies and get healthy food. So these are what we call the modifiable factors that we want to kind of take into account. And in addition, on the right-hand side are all the people we call actors. Several of you fit into these categories. The partners, various partners and providers that are out there, the medical community, preventive public health, and also our healthcare delivery systems, schools and education, universities. We bring a lot of university trends and research to the project about how this is happening not only in New Mexico but around the country. And then so the goal here is to bring all these things together so that we can look at how can we modify preventive health through this type of planning process. I mentioned the access to nature, and this piece has really become much more important because there's a whole lot of information out there that talks about systems approaches between equitable access to nature can definitely change health and well-being and reduce stress. And so we know that having access to nature and spaces, either plants or animals, flora, fauna, can definitely improve cognitive restoration and reduce stress. So that's been, all of the research is very clear on that. Having access to open spaces this can include both passive and active spaces. So having a place to do physical activity or a place just to gather. Community engagement is very important. So even if it's just a place for people to get together for that social aspect, and that's really become very apparent throughout COVID. A lot of the things, we can still get outside and be in nature alone. But one of the things that's really impacting mental health and impacting addiction rates and overuse of alcohol and those types of things have to do with the lack of social engagement. So we want to make sure that we're looking at, are there places for people to get together safely? And obviously, we've been working through all of the pandemic, but we want to take into account what was happening in the county prior to the pandemic, and then also what types of improvements can be considered as we go forward. So those spaces are very important as we look at how we can improve health and well-being. So why Parks and Recreation? Well, this is a big piece. We know that Parks and Recreation can provide, and I say Parks and Recreation is kind of a global term that includes open space, conservation lands, trails, quite often libraries, all of the things that are managed within the county, because we can provide access to the land and the facilities. We also can facilitate, and I say we, the global we, us in the field, we can facilitate opportunities to participate in the active and passive types of recreation and conservation. Also the health and wellness education. A lot of times Parks and Recreation programs are the frontline providers, especially for youth, where they learn how to eat healthfully or they learn how to take care of their bodies. And then this idea of having affordable programming in managed places so that people can get out, do the things that they want to do. We know that this contributes heavily to positive economic impact. So areas, and tourism is a big piece. Several of you mentioned tourism. If we have positive places, and we can definitely influence the economic impacts within the county. And then this idea of just overall mental per individual resilience and community resilience. This is just a real quick way that we look at all these different things. We're looking at why we want to even talk about this. So the warrant for agency action and what's out there right now. So we'll be looking at a lot of the different reports, and I'm very interested in the community health plan, that even the work that you're doing there, and also the tourism plan. Anything that you have available, even if it's just preliminary data, you talked about collecting preliminary data. We would definitely love to have that involved as we're going forward. So anything that you can submit to Corey and the team so that we can consider it in our analysis would be awesome. Also, we want, Pat talked about the convening, the inventory of the assets, looking at the policies and laws and procedures. So thinking about this, often we'll be looking at things like curfew laws, because we know that if you have a group of youngsters or high school students, curfew laws are very important, and they can stop young people from gathering or being physically active. But we also want to do it in what we call a sanctioned way. So if there are non-sanctioned activities happening, we want to look at it from a crime or a law standpoint. But we also want to make sure that we're not stopping kids from moving and getting together, because that's very important for their health. And also the money. How we can look at where the money's coming from, where the potential strongest return on investment, the ROI, might come from. So this is basically the overall elements that we're looking at. Pat presented this earlier, but I just kind of wanted to show you some of the places where these elements will be integrated. So right up front, we know that all of these integrated aspects are very crucial. So they're part of the critical success factors. We're also going to integrate into the needs assessment, into the level of service analysis, into the trends analysis, and in the overall analysis. And then they will come back to you all and all the other stakeholders and staff and the public for our findings, envisioning our draft, and then the implementation plan. So it's integrated throughout. It's not just we're going to collect this information today and then we're done. It's part of every single stage of this process. So that's kind of the quick overview. What I wanted to do now is just kind of facilitate a discussion. And I'm hoping that you all will turn on your cameras and open up your mics, and let's really have just a discussion about these questions. And Dan is going to take copious notes. He's really good at that. So we'll be capturing these. And so the first question that I have for you is based on, several of you said you've lived there for a long time. Given the work that you do, I really would love to hear you just brainstorm, throw it out there. What are the current strengths that are happening within Los Alamos County around the different aspects that I've just spoken about? What are the strengths that are happening? You can turn off your microphones and shout it out. I mean, turn on your microphones is what I meant. Turn off your mute.
Nature is very accessible, almost no matter where you are in town.
Awesome. Okay. Can somebody tell me a little bit more about the accessible piece? How is that a strength? Can people get wherever they want?
I wouldn't say it's accessible as in accessible for people with disabilities, but it's near to everybody's house. Pretty much everyone can walk to a trailhead somewhere near where they are.
Okay, great. What else?
Hi, this is Cam. I think what's been impressive is the on-the-fly integration that's worked towards developing good access to vaccines. So we have a really good vaccination rate here in Los Alamos County. Part of the health plan is also looking at for those that aren't getting vaccinated, why not? As far as, is it access, is it those kind of things? But generally for, relative to other counties and other states, we're doing really well.
Yes, and you can talk about the strengths of it. Some of you are representing various organizations or groups. Feel free to speak about how those might be contributing to these aspects within the county.
So this is Darren. I would say, I think we do really have some nice county facilities up here, and there's been investment made in those facilities. We have the aquatic center, which is obviously getting significant investment right now. We have the golf course, which just continues to get investment. I mean, we do have the ice rink, which is a nice facility. So I think we do have nice facilities. And I think one of the biggest assets we have right now, which I don't know how recognized it is, but we have a whole lot of new families coming in up here to that are recently hired by the laboratory. I have seen it, just a huge difference in the number of families. Just an example is, we offered down at the ice rink, we offered a program for the little kids to get started skating, and we have some of the highest numbers we've ever had. We had 50 Adams, which are our little tiny kids. We had 50 of those kids sign up this year. So it's absolutely amazing the number of new families. And I think that's a huge asset. And I think it's going to change the dynamic a little bit up here, maybe than what it's been in the past.
Very cool. Okay. Who else?
I'll say we have an incredible library. I think that's well resourced. It's very up to date. It serves all ages. So they have amazing programs and they're integrated with us in some of the work we do in the school. So I think we partner well to support youth and families.
That's all right. Nina, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I very much agree with all the previous comments. The range of what we have here is impressive. And one thing I want to add is we have a very self-starting community in the sense that we have a lot of active nonprofit groups that work really hard and are willing to do a lot of work just to put on events for a wide range of people in different sports and different areas. Some of them are in facilities, some of them are on trails. And I think that is a huge asset that can stand to be leveraged more with more friendly approach to how they can work with permitting processes and staff maybe. But I think that would be something that would require very little input to really jumpstart events that are open to a wide range of ages and abilities and things like that. I think it's really impressive. We have a really active tri club that has worked for years with to get grants, and they work with staff at the pool to put on splash and dashes. And we had Atomic Man Duathlon. We've had the triathlon in Los Alamos, amazing, thanks to the county. We have a cross country ski club with cross country trails, and the county has been great, and they even got some things to groom the cross country course. So I just feel like there's just a little bit of something needs to be figured out to make all these things a little easier to continue. But it's impressive how much of the community is willing and able to do those things with just a little bit of polishing from how to make this more functional interaction with the staff, maybe, and permits to make this easier for everybody and more of these happening rather than less of them happening. So we had a lot of famous cycling events used to take place here, and I think they come right back if we were able to figure this out, both road and mountains. So we have the ability and the terrain and the roads. So I think that's a huge unusual strength that should and could be leveraged well.
Wonderful. What else is working well? Chris?
Just to amplify a little bit of what Dina was just saying, I mean, in addition to the public involvement with a lot of what there is, there's a great adoption of what's available to folks. I mean, at any given trail or you name it, I mean, there's a lot of people out and about really taking advantage of things. And for the most part, those communities of different activities, even when they overlap, get along really well. People are, conscientious and stuff like that. So it's a pretty healthy, it's a healthy community overall. But it's also has, healthy adoption of the opportunities that are available, which is, it's good to see.
Right. Anybody else? Fran?
Picking up on what Darren said, the increase of families and young children, some of the library programs for that age are 50 plus participants, and music and motion, they dance, they wiggle. The space in the library can't really deal with that number in a COVID safe environment. So more interweaving of the library and other facilities could bear very positive results.
Okay. So yeah, and so we'll focus in a second on some opportunities and challenges, but so it sounds like the programs and the participation is what you're kind of celebrating right now. But we've got that there, and then we'll get to what are the constraints here in just a minute. But yeah, okay, great. What are there other things? I mean, we always talk about this plan as an opportunity to really celebrate what's going on well, what's out there. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that should be celebrated and considered? Okay. We can always come back to this if you think of something else as we're going forward. My next question truly is around what needs to be fixed? What are the challenges or the weaknesses currently within the county around these topics that we might be able to address with this planning process? Dina?
I was going to answer until you said that we might address with this process. I think one of our strengths and weaknesses is the level of involvement you get from an average person in the events. And because of that, it's often hard to find consensus to move things forward. And so lots of paralysis by analysis, and then hard feelings from that, causing more things to go down the hill for really no reason. So figuring out how to go around that in a better way. I'm not sure how, but figuring that out would be great. And hopefully, it's hard not to take these things personally, but I think both groups tend to take, or all the groups tend to take the things personally, and then it snowballs into we're not working together anymore. So I think that same thing, lots of participation, lots of input, and hard to come to a consensus on most subjects.
Okay. What else?
So I guess I would second some of that, in that I feel like sometimes the integration isn't there. And I guess that's one of the key objectives of this group, is to really have an integrated plan. So that has been missing. I feel like sometimes things are stovepiped and, aquatic centers focusing on the aquatic center, or trails are focusing on trails. Anyway, I think just the overall comprehensive integration would be very helpful. And then the second part of that is, I guess the big concern I have is just timing. I mean, when something's identified, we do get so balled up, it seems, in analysis or studies, or and not that they're not warranted or they don't have their place, but I mean, we've been talking about flow trails. We've been talking about some things for a very long time. Multiple boards have touched the same issue. Multiple participants in multiple years have touched the same issue, and sometimes it seems like it takes years to get things moving forward. So I don't know if there's any possibility or way of making things more efficient, or decreasing timelines and that kind of thing, but that would be definitely an opportunity I think we should pursue.
Wonderful. I know it's very important for us as facilitators of these types of plans to use data to be able to tell the story. So part of the beauty of this type of planning process is to get all the data in front of people, so that people aren't just kind of coming up with their own stories about what, it's a lot. You all know anecdotally, especially if you've lived there since you're 2, there's all sorts of things. And we often say that this group here and staff, you probably know 80 to 90% of what needs to be in this plan right now. We could sit down with you and write it, but our job is to bring in the other 10 to 20% and help prioritize, so that everybody's looking at the same information. So I know that as Pat and Dan and the rest of our team are working together, part of that is to identify all these different pieces that are coming up. There's, as you saw that list from Corey, there's so many different projects. It's just amazing how much is being even addressed right now. And yet, and when you have a pretty highly educated community, and you've got a lot of people with a lot of ideas, it is hard, because it's challenging to prioritize when you've got so many people with great ideas. But that's part of what we're trying to do with this plan, is to have your voices heard along with everybody else's voices, and represent, we always say we represent the community. That means a lot of the people who are not in this conversation, and trying to make sure that we can, and also, things that we see from a professional standpoint that may not have even been brought to the table yet or considered, but might affect your services in the next 5 to 10 years. And so it is a good opportunity to do that. And so hopefully we'll be able to help facilitate that in a meaningful way. What other types of challenges or weaknesses, things that you face right now? Yes, Chris?
I guess in addition to some of the things that you've touched on about, and Dina touched on, and Darren as well, about, attitudes and opinions colliding, and how do we reconcile that? The other part of that is when we have sort of gotten reconciliation, or there is a path forward, a way of channeling some of the great enthusiasm and volunteerism that exists in the community, and doing that in a way that doesn't burn people out, but then it also doesn't leave a bad taste in their mouth. We've had a lot of different initiatives, even just in the time that I've been involved in Parks and Rec, where there've been what seemed like a great volunteer opportunity. I mean, the BMX track was honestly one of these things that was going to start out as a folks were just going to get together, and we were going to work with the organization that does BMX stuff, and people were showing up with shovels and rakes and implements of destruction, and it was going to happen. And then it just all sort of blew apart, and the issue, and then instead of a lot of enthusiastic, folks who wanted to be involved, it just a lot of people who were now sort of disillusioned with the process, and frankly don't really want to be involved. And that's, there were a lot of issues that went into that one particular example, but that's a very real thing that happens a lot around here, is that when folks do sort of want to volunteer, or they do want to help out, it can be extremely difficult to sort of channel that volunteerism in a way where people feel like they made a difference.
So is there currently, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is there currently a volunteer program that can help organize that, or is that a need?
I would say that it's sort of ad hoc. I think other folks who've been more involved in a lot of these, like Dina, who's been involved in a lot of this a lot longer than I've been. I mean, from my perspective, it feels like it's sort of ad hoc. A lot of times those efforts try to get coordinated through the county, but then we've got, different things. We're in a weird multi-jurisdictional area. So like the outdoor trails, for example, we've got Los Alamos County property, we've got US Santa Fe and Espanola District Forest Service property, Department of Energy property. And so what ends up happening is when you've got all of these things, these sort of administrivia things that are very real and bind what can be done by volunteers in conjunction with sort of the ad hoc nature about how folks come together, not a lot gets done, and at least in my opinion. And people, like I said, sort of get disillusioned with the process, and they go, well, and I'm sure, and again, my focus is very much sort of like on outdoor recreation, stuff like that. I'm guessing that there's examples like that. I mean, I like when my kids were little, there were things that I would volunteer with, to their activities or whatever, something going on in the county. And again, there was sort of a level of disorganization that had a bunch of us just sort of standing around, chit-chatting for hours when it could have been like productive the whole time.
Okay, yeah, volunteer management is a real skill for agencies to develop, and so that's why I'm just taking that a little bit further, because a couple of you have mentioned there's a lot of people with a lot of energy that may not be channeled or organized at this point. So that's why I'm delving in this just a little bit deeper. We call this a semi-structured, because what happens is when something comes up, we can go a little bit deeper to see, okay, is there an area there? So I'm going to just ask kind of a follow-up question on that. Is there an opportunity right now to maybe help better organize that type of energy that is available? Are you feeling that, Dina?
I think there is. I'm hoping there is. A lot of it is historic. And what we have is we have new staff, relatively new. I hope you don't mind, Mrs. Tyron. But I was really hoping that, and we have Mrs. Tyron has only been for just over a year in his position. And a lot of the things that Chris and the other people have referred to, including myself, have happened before him. So I'm hoping the new energy and the new approaches may help us with this. But for example, the BMX track thing, that was a 2-year thing that went from everybody wanting to build it and supporting it financially and physically to we have nothing. And we don't have those volunteers in 2 years. And it all happened before Corey even joined the group, for example. So I think the challenge is that I've actually heard in the community that the reason the county would put you on a board is to keep you out of their hair and just keep you spinning like a hamster at a wheel. So that is a challenge. That is the current view of people who were trying to change in the community historically. The plus I'm hoping is the fact that we have lots of new staff on board with hopefully, I think, new ideas that will help us recover from that, I hope, and think positive. But that quote is actually a direct quote from somebody, and it was in a group, and that group agreed. So that was a very disheartening thing for me to hear. Someone is being on the second board now. I hope we can turn that view of people who have put on multiple events since early 1990s. This is a group of people who've been putting on events since early 1990s who said that, and I thought that was very bad indicator for our current relationship between the community volunteers and the things we can do here. And it's hard for somebody like Mr. Tyron in his new position historically to just inherit all that. So I'm hoping both new staff and us getting the community getting over it can somehow with this work become more positive and more integrated.
Okay, so that's often we hear something like, when you've got so many opportunities and so many different ideas for projects, it's both a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's hard to get people wrapped around. So one of the things we can try and do is kind of help prioritize with that big long list that Corey presented. That's a lot. I mean, usually that's way too many. So partly what we're trying to do is go, okay, how can we get the engagement from the overall community and start to prioritize those into some key projects that can actually get done? Does that am I hearing you correctly as we're talking through this? It seems like, and I'm sure there may not be consensus on this group tonight as to which those priority projects are, and that's okay. But at least we can start to talk about it. Yeah.
Yes, I do agree. And I think one important thing will be projects are of course one thing, but volunteer management, as you described it, I think is a big thing to address that would get other projects moving and out of the hands, to lower the pressure on the list that you have from Mrs. Iron. So if we could smooth things out with how people can put on events and be help each other out with some of those projects, and maybe I think it'll take the pressure off requested projects and requested specific work maybe. So right now there isn't good communication. People actively give up putting on an event after difficulties with permitting and difficulties with staff response. So if we can fix that, I think that would automatically take some of the pressure off the staff on the projects potentially, and while improving quality and quantity of events in town.
So there's several different things that's going to capture you. We've talked about volunteer management. We've talked about the need to improve a permitting process and potentially make that feel more equitable or organized, right? So permitting, volunteer management, you talked about need for multiple events. You talked about prioritizing projects. What else needs, if you ran the world, if you were Corey Styron today and you got to make decisions tomorrow, what are the top things that you would think need to be improved?
Maybe not something that needs to be improved, but just something to keep in mind is a balance of things that are for locals and for tourists. Some things are for both for sure, but just kind of keeping it in mind, which are the things that we really want to market to people outside the community, which are things that really we just focus on for the people who live here.
Okay. Great. A balance of tourism and stuff for locals. That's great. Okay. What else? Chris, I thought you had an idea. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just nodding.
Okay, good. All right. Dina, did you have another?
I did, and it's kind of repetitive, but I have to say when the task implementation force started meeting, they're big. In fact, they invited a consultant, I believe, in specifically because they identified a very urgent need to help the community. I'm not sure what the terms would be, and maybe Katie remembers this more because it was in the beginning of the task force, but it was specifically a consultant that came from Colorado to address the fact that people who put on events here have such a difficult time putting them with in conjunction with the county. So that is definitely an ongoing consideration that I do not feel has been addressed, but has been repetitively brought up. So I would say that has to be a big one to do something about tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is a subcommittee of the Tourism Implementation Task Force that is focused on events, but I don't know, I'm not on that subcommittee. I don't know if they've been meeting lately, and at our tourism meetings lately, we've not been able to get a quorum. So we haven't met for quite a while.
Okay. Christine, you've been quiet. Did you have anything to add?
I think from the County Health Council side, I just would love to give you a heads up of a potential challenge and just maybe some focus group fatigue. So this might be a different group that you'll be reaching, or hopefully a more depth in the groups, but some frustration with, haven't you had a focus group about this before? Or haven't we done this analysis before? Or survey fatigue, and that, and then that lack of seeing the results, and maybe a lack of presenting that data back to the stakeholders. So sometimes it feels very extractive, like we're taking this information from you, but we never really close the loop and come back and say, this is what we learned, and this is what we're working on. So just some heads up. And since we're also doing that comprehensive health survey, we just want to be cautious about, are we over serving people? And I'll just echo what other people, are we reaching the people that's voices really need to be elevated, which is often not true. And then I would just say that awareness that we tend to have an assumption that everyone can afford our amenities. So even an equipment fee or a race fee or whatever it is, I'd love to see those things be more accessible, have sliding scales, or just more opportunities for families or youth to participate who might not normally be able to.
So that you bring up a great point, and I know Katie mentioned this earlier. So if how can we best meet the folks who are not represented in this meeting today? You know, are there other groups that we can make sure that we involve in focus groups that would be helping to kind of hit either marginalized or under-resourced communities? Are there key champions, community champions that we need to make sure we have involved? You guys tell us, who do we need to make sure is involved?
Yeah, I made a little list, and I'm not sure who's on Corey's extended list, but I just put Self-Help, which is an organization that works with people usually in financial crisis or need some support, emergency support. Our faith community, they often pick up the gaps when people can't meet needs. The UNMLA ESL and high school equivalency program, they have quite a community that's often quieter in our community. And then often lacking in these conversations is our hospital, which is unfortunate. They're not really represented right now on our health council. And so I wrote down hospital and urgent care.
And you have JJAB on your list too?
I didn't have JJAB, but I know they were invited to the bigger focus group meeting. So I think they'll be represented. And then I've been calling on also our English language teachers in the school a lot, just because they're usually working with foreign-born populations who might not be as socially connected. So those are some ones I just wrote down when we were listening earlier.
Is anybody here from schools?
I'm from the schools.
You're from schools. Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, great. Cameron?
There's also the Racial Equity and Inclusiveness Task Force. That's part of the county, and I think they should be part of this conversation too.
And I think I don't have the list in front of me, but I think we did have a variety of representatives who weren't able to make it tonight, and I think that was one of them. But yeah, Chris.
Yeah, actually, so this one sort of maybe fits in between the two bullets, number 2 and number 3, and it actually goes back to something that Katie mentioned as sort of the balance of what are we looking at from tourism versus locals and that kind of thing. One of the things that at least has been that I've observed and folks have told me is that we don't really have and I'll just say it, like, for example, we don't have RV parks in town. We don't have, basically from the standpoint of when people do take advantage of the recreation opportunities in Los Alamos, they show up, they do what they're going to do, and they leave. Maybe they stay at the Holiday Inn Express, that kind of thing. But I mean, a significant portion of the population, tourist population, especially now, is campers and tents and RVs and that kind of thing. And I mean, the closest we have is basically a parking lot on the edge of town with no hookups or anything like that. Or the White Rock Visitor Center, which has some spots, but it's sort of limited hookups. And it's not what that population is really looking for in terms of the opportunity to be able to like show up and park their camper and take advantage of what's available in the community, both recreation and commercial, and all the benefits therein. And so so a lot of everyone I know who comes up here to either bike or hike or do whatever, they drive up in the morning, they do what they're going to do, and then they go back somewhere else. And
so there's a need for camping. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I know that there's sort of a longer term, like the Camp May, and I think it was even on Corey's list of improving some of the the areas going up to the ski hill and that kind of thing. But I mean, for a lot of folks now, I mean, there's just you're not gonna pull a fifth wheel up the ski hill road to try to get camping up there. And I mean, when you're going up and down, I'm sure it's same in Colorado, but when you're going up and down the freeway in New Mexico these days, then every other fifth vehicle is some sort of recreational vehicle. And Los Alamos is basically completely missing that opportunity for attracting that potential tourist population.
Katie? Keep your hand up. Yeah.
I was just going to ask Christine if she thought the Native American Parent Council might be a good group to include as well.
That's a great idea, Katie. And then we have an equity council at our schools too, and there's representation from the Native American parent group on that as well.
Great. So what else? What else should we make sure that we take into account related to, do you all have regular meetings? I mean, do you feel like the communication between your various organizations and groups are good or not? Chris is shaking his head no. And sometimes I will tell you that after having done this type of planning around the country for a lot of time, that's one of the things that often comes out of this is the creation of regular group meetings like this. Because I mean, when was the last time you all got together and had this kind of conversation? And maybe you do. That's why I'm trying to figure out. Maybe you do it all the time. But or is it something that's needed to be able to coordinate regularly?
I think there's a lot of potential cross collaboration that could occur among the different committees. I mean, there's definitely overlaps between, you know, all of the committees. When I hear an announcement from, you know, tourism, it's like, oh, hey, you know, that would be great to tie back into, you know, this issue that Parks and Rec is looking at. And that I'm sure that's true for across the board.
Mm-hmm. So can somebody tell me a little bit more, and this is just for my own understanding, how the community health plan that's being done separately from this plan, yet they're very, very similar in terms of some similar goals. Has that been something that's been a completely different group, or how are you all communicating with those types of aspects? Yes, Cam?
We've just started. I think we've really only been working maybe 4 months on it, kind of thing. I was not aware of this integrated master plan at all. I don't know if Christine was. We're on the same subcommittee, but so I think that's sort of indicative of maybe not the greatest communication.
Well, and it's wonderful that you're aware and here tonight. That's obviously, I mean, this is the first meeting on this, but certainly often when we work with county systems like this, the overlay system, it's hard. It's really hard to communicate with all different, you know, municipalities and those sorts of things. But that's often this, you know, sometimes what we're looking for is how can we facilitate in the longer term. Is it a quarterly meeting? We often call it like a leadership summit that happens quarterly, or a partners group that happens, or especially when you all have a kind of common goal of this type of integrated plan, is there a way to keep that energy going? Do you see any opportunities around that, or any other things that we haven't discussed?
I will add quickly, Teresa, that unless you're a chair or vice chair, sometimes it's hard to engage because the county chair has a boards and commissions meeting once a month that's typically held by the chairs or the vice chairs. Mm-hmm. And there's 26 or 27 boards and commissions that could participate in that. Mm. What you're seeing here is the ones that I felt would most closely touch this process. So there's an entire group of 20 other boards and commissions that do things, and from my observation, we tend to get a little silo focus as we're all working on this little thing, and we don't go, man, I have this really great idea. Let's talk to somebody else.
Yeah, well, that's 27.
That's something that should come out of this, is maybe some better cross communication ideas. You know, 27 boards and commissions is a huge amount for a county. and I mean, I'm just floored by the number of projects that you shared, Corey. I hadn't seen that list yet before. And so there's just a ton of stuff going on, but it does sound like it's kind of just discombobulated, a little uncoordinated right now in terms of a lot of people with a lot of great ideas. So maybe that would be one thing that can come out of this, is an idea to at least have some coordinated priorities. Just want to go back just a little bit, just make sure we don't miss it. And Pat, feel free to ask any questions. I know you.
I have one here. Yeah. It's not really a question, but Corey, in listening to this, and because we kind of have going through the holidays here and looking towards that, let's just call it the first week of February, there might be some indication on the front end that if you take this PowerPoint we showed tonight, maybe shorten it up with Teresa's stuff that no offense, Teresa, but
Sure, get ready.
cut through that stuff and say, we're doing an integrated plan. Here's stuff on the board. Can you answer these 4 questions? And whether you email it, whether you give it to these 27 boards, and personally, if I'm in your chair, depending on how much input I get back, kind of tells me how interested they are to be a part of it. I mean, it's pretty easy to sit back and point fingers at the end, but this might be a way. You and I talked about, maybe you guys doing some internal stuff, because as soon as you tell me I got 99 people in there, I'm going, man, maybe I should have spent 3 months instead of 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this is a way, because one thing that we always do is try to put stuff in your hands electronically and otherwise to get to people that can't come to the table because of they're on vacation the 3 days we're there, or that they don't hear about it or whatever. And then you kind of got another way to say maybe they don't get all the benefits of the discussion, but they can certainly as a group answer those 4 questions, individually answer those 4 questions, get it back to us. We compile all that stuff. And the biggest thing is, so we ask the right stuff on the survey. And I don't know how to answer the over survey question. It is what it is. We can do timing, we can do a lot of stuff, but this one's going to be, integral to what comes out of this plan. So as far as prioritization, but that's just an idea that came to mind as we're talking here, as we've got tools to do this and to get it in those people's hands that might not be heard, and see what happens.
So I don't want to, if anybody has an additional comments to add to the questions that I was asking, and even if it's something, very simple, facility or program or things that we're missing, we can get there. But I also just wanted to kind of turn this back over to Pat to talk about kind of what the next steps are, because this is just the start. This is not, as we're really starting to collect information. This is just, it's not, we want to make sure that you're involved, but everything is heard. So this has been a really wonderful, eye-opening conversation for me. Pat, do you want to talk over?
Yes, and we appreciate it. Next steps, I tried to just put this in kind of some next steps and timeline without having the whole back end of it here. But we're going to complete the focus groups and stakeholders in January, but it looks like now the first week in February. And then all of what we heard, we are going to summarize. And then we're going to put a PowerPoint, and it'll be an open webinar up to 500 people that we will present the findings of our focus group and stakeholder interviews. So this process of everybody we touched, what we heard the most of, and still get them to type in the chats, new information. What do you agree with? What do you not? All that stuff. Then all that information will come out of there, and we'll put together our draft statistically valid survey somewhere in that February, March range, and it'll be mailed out. And then we're going to put the exact same survey online and ask everybody to publicize it any way, shape, and form. We tally them separately. Typically, they compare within just a percentage point or so anyway. But obviously, we want to protect the validity, but also give everybody an opportunity to take the same survey and answer it. Then, as I said, our crew will be on site doing the inventory assessment. We'll then turn around and do virtual findings in 2 different presentations. We're targeting April for that. So as you say, the stakeholders not hearing what their input was. Yes, this is the point where we're going to say, here was what everybody said and the summary and the key issues that were brought forward on all of the focus groups. And then here's what the survey results said. And we'll have comparisons between online and statistically valid. Then we're going to cut that so it's not a 5-hour meeting. We're going to come back and do the just on the inventory assessment. So that's going to be, we visited every one of your sites. We looked at every amenity, we graded it, and we put our level of service components together. So we'll actually have heat maps and those types of things. And then the next step, which I didn't put on here, but we'll figure out what we're calling a visioning session. And that's going to be, talking about those key issues that came from all these results, and how do we now look at those and start to put some preliminary recommendations together. And maybe that's the key that I see is, if there's a whole lot going on out there, but nothing gets done, but the studying part of it is maybe now get to the point where you match up resources where where it's coming from, you can do it. And, as we all hear, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. We look at these types of plans as first 5 years, we can be very close. 5 to 10 years is a little visionary. And then it really needs to be revisited, probably somewhere between 7 and 8, 9 years to say, how did we do? Why didn't we accomplish some things? Is it still valid, and move forward? So it's more of an update at that point in time. Instead of waiting so long that you got to create a whole new plan because we're in a whole new, time. So any questions on next steps? And we'll get that information out. We'll have, dates just like this. We'll have dates and times figured out. But as we said, I've got my email, phone number on there. Teresa's on there as well, which can be funneled to me. But likewise, if you got any particular questions about GP Red or any of the healthy communities, maybe Teresa's a person, and then she'll forward that on to me. But certainly send anything, any big or small comment, something you forgot, something you heard at work that you want to include in there. Feel free to send it to me. Give me a call.
Chris, I see your hands up.
Yeah, actually, I sort of had a quick question, maybe some homework for all of us to be looking at. I was perusing your all's website and even downloaded a couple executive summaries of some of the featured projects, but I was just curious if there might be something that we should be looking at in terms of projects that you all have worked on in the past. Knowing that every town's different, every county's different, and Lord knows Los Alamos is different. But is there something we could sort of be looking at to maybe something jumps out at us that, something we didn't maybe talk about today or won't necessarily get to in the course of our interactions, but just that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I do welcome, we encourage all of you to check out both the Greenplay and the GP Red websites, because you'll see a little bit more. It might even get you thinking about things that you didn't think to bring up tonight, or, oh my gosh, this is a really good idea that so-and-so, there's lots of different projects on there. So if you're in the, we love all these things, we're planning geeks, so we'd be happy to just read all this stuff all the time. But if you're looking for some, ideas that might trigger, oh, could this happen in Los Alamos? I mean, there are communities all over the country who are addressing these issues, and we want to make sure that we really help you decide what's best for Los Alamos County and bring those to you.
And just to build on that, Chris, when we actually built the RFP, we talked with people in Fruita, Colorado, and Hutchinson, Kansas, that had gone through this process. And then Liberty, Missouri was also another person we talked with about how they formulated it. And we tried to incorporate some of those captions into the RFP. Teresa, if you could, after we're done, if you could send this to me. We do have on the county webpage, there's a community service department projects. There's a file with this, so we'll drop this presentation in there. The beauty part of this presentation is that the recording will be there. There's also the transcripts. We're doing this in closed captioning, so the transcripts will be there as well. So you can see that. And then I would encourage you, if you have a list of people that you've thought of, like Christine has, who we need to get on the list to make sure we talk to, please get me that list. We'll be really working to refine those people to talk to while they're here. But we're also prepared that if we need to do any outreach as a department to supplement Greenplay, we're ready to do it. We really want this, that when we get done, we look at this and go, yeah, this is a community plan. Yep, I know why this is number one on the list. I might not like it, but I can support it. And really, that will help us focus our budgets, our time going forward.
Corey, I'm also going to send you a PowerPoint that I'm going to use for the rest of the focus groups. And it
Okay.
is exactly what I was talking. I got like 4 slides with 2 questions on a page that get to the same stuff. Tonight, we thought it was very important with you guys in your positions to understand a little bit more about what we're trying to put together. And I think from the open public and that, Corey, it's kind of more about, you know, yes, we're going to involve all these things. We want to hear from all these aspects, but spend more of that time getting those questions answered. And then, you know, if you want to do a hybrid to put on there, or, you know, you can use whatever you want to get that information and get it back to us. But so I've probably already taken that step, and I'll shoot you that yet tonight.
Thank you.
And I will say, I don't, all of the ones that Corey mentioned, we've done, I'm not gonna say a lot, but several of the Healthy Communities Initiative Park and Recreation plans, but I can't think of one that has all of these boards, all of the aspects from outdoor rec to libraries to healthy community to all that, all in one package. And that's why I say kudos to you guys for trying to do this. And we get it. I mean, everybody's out there in their own little world, and it, you know, I hate to say it, but, you know, I guess being a consultant gives me the license to do it. But, you know, people, they sit back and they criticize at the end. So I'm one of those with the end in mind. Let's not give them that opportunity, where it's just like when everybody in your community has an opportunity to take the survey, and we pump it out there in every way, shape, or form, and have everybody hitting all their constituent email lists. You know, we ought to be, you know, it's the same thing. We ought to be getting thousands, and we usually get hundreds, and that's good and that's okay. But then when we come in and we hear, well, nobody asked me, you know, sometimes we got to just, you know, bite the inside of our lip and say, you know, we did everything we could to turn over every rock. And that's what we're asking you guys' help. And what Corey has graciously offered to do is in between times. And like I said, we're not going to be there. We got two focus groups Wednesday this week, and then it's going to be the first weekend of February. So you got plenty of time to gather stuff that, you know, we look at and input even while we're on site down there. So we do appreciate that help.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Teresa, you good?
I'm good. Thank you all. Thanks for your
I don't see
input.
Dan. There's Dan. He made it through there. Okay. Corey, you got anything?
I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this. Please wear a hat as an ambassador, so let people know what we're doing so they can be ready to participate. If they get an invitation from a focus group, please be an ambassador to remind them to be there. That's really what we want you to do, is to really be ambassadors and have this conversation. And I'm really interested in the integration of this plan so that we all have a game plan moving forward and we're all on the same page. So thanks again for your time, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Corey, can I just ask one question? Sorry. It's just after 7. So I guess one of the things that, and I know you talked about grabbing the presentation and making that available and that kind of thing. I don't want to call it a media packet, but is there going to be like, you know, just some real simple URLs, some places that, you know, we can post in social media on different, you know, sites and stuff like that we know folks would be involved with, just to sort of make that you know, that community input like easy to happen, if that makes sense.
That's our desire. Catherine's here. She's helping with our marketing on our end.
Okay.
So we're we're working out. We're also open to suggestions. We did something a little different this time as we did a notice of project. So we did a press release to say, hey, this project's going to be happening. You may not know about it today, but it's on the party. But yeah, like anything else, we want to make sure that we scream this from the rooftops as we really start ginning.
Great, thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks again for your time so much.
You bet.
Bye,
Have a good
everyone.
evening.
Bye-bye.